I didn't see anything.
Okay, we have started the live event, which means that this is now available over the internet for other people to watch.
Oh, cool.
So you can begin the meeting at any time.
All right, good. Well, this clock says 6:29. That one says 6:29. Mine says 6:31.
6:30.
6:30. All right. So we'll call the meeting to order and please stand and pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. Well, we just have a couple things on the agenda tonight. It should go pretty smoothly, I think. Angela, do you want to do a roll call, please?
I can. Chairman Parker,
He's not here.
Commissioner Wolthius,
Here.
Commissioner Gatchell,
Here.
Commissioner Stevens is absent, Commissioner Journey,
Present.
Commissioner Korn is absent, and Commissioner Unger.
Here.
Oh, right, works. Cool. So are both of you here for the public hearing tonight? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. We have something on the agenda for public comment for people that want to come in and make public comments that's not related to anything else on the agenda. So we are going to be able to bypass the public comment because nobody's here for that. And then we'll look at the meeting minutes from May 4th. And so does anybody have any corrections, questions, additions?
I have a correction, well, Commissioner Journey had a correction, which I have already fixed, page 2. So I've already gotten that on there. So if anybody has any other corrections,
What is it?
my spell check did Journey again.
My name, as usual.
Oh, okay.
I added yours to my dictionary, so it'll quit changing it.
Any others?
I don't have any.
I don't have any.
I have none.
Okay,
So I would move that we approve the minutes as corrected.
A second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hold on, I have to do a
Oh, right, a roll call vote.
roll call vote, so. Commissioner Wolthius,
Yes.
okay, Commissioner Gatto,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
and Commissioner Unger.
Yes.
So 4 yeses, 3 absent, it passed.
Cool. Then we can jump right into our public hearing. So. It's been a while since I was chairing a meeting, so I'm going to just take a quick look at my cheat sheet here, make sure I don't skip things. So we're going to have a public hearing on file BR 20-01. The applicant is seeking a variance to allow a length to width ratio greater than 2.5 to 1 required in the Sweet Home Municipal Code. The western portion of the proposed property is within the 50-foot riparian zone and is designated as a significant wetland. The proposed configuration has an average width of 120 feet with a total average length of 400 feet or less. This configuration would have an average length to width ratio of 3.66 to 1. When the unbuildable area is overlaid, the average length would be reduced by 300 feet or less and thus would be in the 2.5 to 1 ratio. Per application ZMA 19-03 and ordinance 1284 approved by the Sweet Home City Council on April 14th, 2020, the properties are in the residential low density R1 zone. So I will open the public hearing at 6:33 and read into the record. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. And then we will go to declarations by the commission. Does anyone have, sorry, I forgot. I need to review the hearing procedure. So the first thing that happens is there's a declaration by the commission that there's no personal bias or conflict of interest or ex parte information. And then we'll hear a staff report, and then we'll have testimony from the applicant, and then we'll have testimony from people in favor of the application, and then we'll have testimony from people in opposition to the application, and then we'll have a time for neutral testimony, and then we'll have a time for rebuttal, and then we will close the public hearing. And we'll have a discussion and a decision among the planning commissioners, and we will either approve it, deny it, approve it with conditions, or continue it to another time. If there's an objection to a decision, it can be appealed to the city council. Okay, bro, then now that I did that, does anybody have any personal bias?
I have none.
I have none.
No.
I do not.
Conflict of interest?
No.
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 Ex parte information? No.
No.
I know of the property, but no ex parte.
Okay. Then we can do a staff report.
All right, if you, in your packet, you should have a site map, which is nice and colorful, showing kind of the wetland area and the riparian zone, which is in here. So this is, Violet Creek is a significant wetland, so it is very strict on the requirements of the riparian buffer zone. So they are unable without expensive permits to be able to build in that area, making it to where their actual buildable area for this, when they do their property line adjustment, is actually smaller than what the lot size is. So, which is why we are coming to you with this variance, because it is over the 2.5 to 1 ratio. However, the buildable area is not. And this is one of those examples where it is not the applicant caused. It's actually a natural resource zone. It's a wetland zone. It's in the 100-year floodplain. So there's a lot of criteria that makes it to where they can't build in that area. And so it actually, their buildable portion comes out to be the right length to width ratio. The rest of it, so this is the first part of this application. So this is actually an ongoing project. They've done one property line adjustment. In order to do the second property line adjustment, the variance has to be done. And then once, if the variance is approved and then the property line adjustment, then they will also go and partition this for further development. But the issue we have right now is the length to width ratio on that one piece that they would like to do a property line adjustment, which I added that application just for reference so you can see what the plan is to move forward. So
that's very helpful. Thank you.
if you guys have any questions, additional questions for me.
Well, first of all, it's probably important for you to say whether or not they have met all the criteria required for a variance.
Yes, they have.
Okay.
So this is one of the ones where they actually, it is not a request by them. Let me get to that section. Sorry, for some reason you said technology. Everything else I normally have is paper. So if you look into the criteria, it would be review and design criteria A. So staff findings, the situation that created the need for the variance was not created by the applicant. The situation is due to the western portion of the proposed property being within the 50-foot riparian corridor and is designated a significant wetland. The applicant has expressed their desire to leave the significant wetland and or riparian corridor in its natural state. They have proposed no development in that area. The proposed configuration has an average width of 120 feet with a total average length of 400 or less. This configuration would have an average length to width ratio of 3.66 to 1. When the unbuildable area is overlaid, the average length will reduce to 300 feet or less. So if you look at the criteria of whether the situation that created a need for a variance was created by the person requesting the variance, no, it wasn't. It's a natural. The economic impact upon the person requesting the variance, if requested, is denied. They wouldn't be able to go through with their property line adjustment. The analysis of physical impacts of development could have, such as visual noise, traffic, increase of damage, erosion, landslide hazards. This is actually going to prevent that. They can't build in that area anyway. So it won't affect any, it won't cause any erosion, landslide hazards. Preservation of native tree species. There's the list there: oak, madrone, Doug fir, ponderosa, big leaf. It's not going to affect any of those because they plan to keep the riparian zone and the natural resource. That's part of this. And then the proposed impacts of aesthetic to the property, it will actually keep the aesthetics of the property because the natural zone is going to stay there. So they will have nice green space at the end of each of those properties. And the properties that have already been developed to the north also have kept the riparian zone in there, so that are not affected by this application. So they have kept the buffer and made sure that they don't build into that buffer.
Right, so those are considerations. I think the thing that I'm always most concerned about is whether or not it's the minimum, because they must make sure that it's the minimum variance necessary to make reasonable use of the property. And so can you elaborate on why it's the minimum?
It is the minimum, and actually they're going above and beyond. So their surveyor from CTC actually.
The map is up now. The map is up now.
Oh, thank you. So the surveyor actually on there, and I had a conversation with him. So the timber buffer zone is actually 100 feet. Our buffer for Wiley Creek is only 50 feet, but he had put in 100 feet, and I had a discussion with him because that's what he's familiar with. So even with the 50-foot buffer, they would still comply, but they're protecting, you know, him and I had a discussion about that. So they originally had planned on even a larger buffer, which they didn't need in order to have that 2.5 to 1. So they are doing the minimum variance, and they're actually one of the properties that we have right now, the minimum buffer for Wiley Creek is 50 feet. The buffer they have on the site plan I have right now is 67 feet. So they're actually going above and beyond what is required.
So before I keep asking
That was interesting.
questions, let's see if anybody else has questions. I have more questions.
The Band-Aid didn't hold.
Does anybody else have questions?
Did we catch you mid-thought? Was there, sorry, the TV made a noise and wanted to make sure you.
I have another question about the minimum necessary, but I wanted to open it up to other people. I don't want to dominate the questioning. So, do you, Eva?
Well, I was just gonna have a question about the language and the efficacy of saying the applicant has expressed their desire to leave the significant wetland and riparian corridor in its natural state. So I understand the sentiment with that, but it's not legal language. It's not something we could go back to later and say, well, they said that that's what they'd like to do, but now that's not what they're doing. So I'm just not sure about the utility of having that sentence included, and if it's a benefit or not. It's just a.
One thing to keep in mind is that this is in the R1 zone.
Right.
So there can't be more than one home on the property. So if they were to develop any of that, you can't develop it further. And so this unbuildable area is just that, it's unbuildable. There's not any, they have expressed their desire, yes, but they also are prevented from building on that portion.
Well, and also I understand that the terrain is, the drop off from the high water line is, 30 feet down. So kind of makes it physically difficult to go past the desire.
Right.
But,
And it's not just a local criterion law, it's actually the state.
yeah, I know, I
Valley
read
Creek is definitely a state mandated.
the safe harbor criteria
Yes.
connected with the number 5 of the LUBA.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
And Department of State Lands, they're pretty strict on making sure they adhere to that criteria, so.
So while they are expressing their desire, it also is the fact that they just can't build anything on it.
right,
So it's kind of superfluous that they
Yeah.
put that.
yeah,
It doesn't have a legal bearing on this. It just basically they're saying, we want to comply with this. We recognize the value of this land.
right,
We're not trying to use any of it. Essentially, there are some areas where, you can mitigate and you can still use the property to some degree. What they're saying is they're not going to apply, they're not going to even try to contest any of that.
Well, they're not quite saying that, even though they won't be allowed to anyway. And that's why I'm just thinking, though, I don't know. Anyway,
It is, yeah, it's kind of superfluous language. I get that.
Is it their language from their application? Is that why it's in there?
They have expressed a desire, yes.
okay.
Not exact words,
It's
but
irrelevant, but it's,
Okay.
So my question about the minimum variance is whether or not they could have made it into less lots, and then they could have had width to depth ratio that would have complied with the.
Well, so they have to go through a process. So the one that we went through before, this property, I'm gonna stand up for you. So if you look at this, originally, these lines are not there. So it was this big piece and then this. So in
Right,
order to get rid of this weird triangle, the very first property line adjustment came and straightened this out. The
Right.
second property line adjustment, so they had, this line, so they went and straightened this out.
Right.
In order to make these a little bit more buildable, so they're gonna have the top portion, they're gonna have the bottom portion. So then they're eventually going to partition these to do, there's gonna be, and you can ask the applicant when we get done, because I may be misstating, but this is going to be single family up here. They've expressed possible single family, maybe some different mixed housing in here. Now granted, this was a while ago and that could change depending on what's approved and what's not approved. So right now, this whole portion of it is mostly to straighten out this weird section right here. There is existing buildings right here, so they kind of have to keep that in check so that this one can stay where it is and then be able to separate the rest of them. And
So the red line's already there. Is that
the
what you're
red line is the black line has been already approved. This one was approved.
Oh, the black line's already
The
there.
black line is already approved, so it's mostly kind of took apart this one, did this, and then they're gonna divide this so this guy can stay by himself, the existing house. The rest of this is all bare lot. There is an existing, I can't remember if it's 1 or 2 houses right here, but these are already existing. So they're dividing off this portion right here that already has existing buildings, and then we'll build on the upper pieces.
So the black line's already there.
Yes.
They're going to take out the dashed line and put in the red line.
yes,
Yes, and then divide off the existing structures from the rest of it. And then the other portion of it was the top piece. So if this line gets approved, and then we'll be partitioning, then the partition application. They're all actually here, but they're pending the variance application in order. So in order to move the rest of them, the variance. So
Okay.
it's a little, the way the lines are and a little confusing.
Understand.
There's 4 different steps here. It's just one step has to come before the next one, so.
So in order to take out the dashed line, they have to put a red line there somewhere.
Yes, it has to be divided. So that's what these
So that
existing
is-
property
okay.
lines look like right now, which are a little
Good.
awkward. So trying to straighten out the property lines, make them more square.
Yeah, just want to make sure that we're complying with our rules, that we have the minimum necessary and we're not just giving variances when they're not really needed. Okay, well, that's all my questions. I think that's it. So I think it's time for testimony. So could we have the applicant please come up to,
And we're gonna have them sit over there so the camera reaches better.
okay.
So.
Well, there you go. Can you please state your name and address?
Mr. Emmert, 43578 Wiley Creek Drive, Sweet Home.
Okay.
And I really don't have much to say. I think it's pretty self-explanatory what we're doing. I didn't even realize that there was a meeting this evening until just a little while ago, but I'm just a truck driver. I don't do too well. That's why I have Rick from CTC handling all of this stuff for me. But I would just like to say that it's not our intention at all to create any kind of a hardship or inconvenience or anything for anybody in the neighborhood. We just would like to build some nice houses, as we have already done one. And the original reason that we asked to partition this is, as Angela said, was it's got that goofy property line. That little piece goes out there into the middle of this field that is no good for anything. We wanted to straighten that up. So if we ever wanted to, we own that manufactured home on the corner of Highway 20 and 53rd. And if we ever want to sell that, you know, it would be nice to not have to sell that little triangle piece along with that property. So we're trying to straighten that up, and then I don't know how soon we're gonna do anything, but eventually maybe we would like to build a couple more houses on that area. We're in the process of starting to build another one now on the north end of the property next to the new one that we just did build. So that's about all I have to say. I think it's reasonable. I think we're being pretty good stewards of the land. That is a riparian area, although the blackberries are going crazy. So if somebody sees me down there in that area with I have a little excavator with the mower head on it, I might reach down there and kind of try to beat the blackberries back, but that's about as much as disturbance as we plan on doing in that area.
Okay.
No questions?
I don't have any further
Right.
questions.
Thank you guys for your time.
Does anybody else have questions? No?
I have none.
I do
All
not.
right. Good. Is there anybody here to speak as a proponent for this applicant? No? Anybody here to testify in opposition to the application? Anybody here to testify or say anything neutral?
I guess you could say I'm neutral.
Do you want to come up and give some neutral testimony?
Don't worry about me, Carl. That's your right. I understand people don't like change.
No, the change is fine.
Yeah. Give us your name and address, please.
My name is Carl Long. I live at 5200 Nandina Street, which is adjacent to the properties that have been upgraded as far as designated and designation and zoning is concerned. So I have to say I'm neutral. I'm very positive in the fact that Cal and Roger has had the opportunity to utilize the property down there other than just a vast piece of open territory, you know, that we've enjoyed over the years. I have to, the only disconcerting point that I haven't understood about the whole process is the 100-year floodplain designation and what the information is that actually has been utilized as far as a 100-year floodplain is concerned. My question is, was it based on the old mill pond that used to be out there? Or is it based on upgraded information that possibly might be very positive in some of the decisions that are going forward. About 11 years ago, I had a surveyor resurvey the property that I was concerned with because FEMA had designated it, a part of my property, as being within the 100-year floodplain. The surveyor resurveyed the property because the mill pond is no longer there, and that had been used in designating my property as being a part of that floodplain. And the surveyor redesignated the 100-year floodplain as being probably, I looked at the paperwork. We've been going through paperwork lately, what comes with age. But the 100-year floodplain was designated, I believe, as about 27 feet below the area that has been designated as buildable or redesignated as an R1 boundary, if you will. So my question again is, which of the decisions that have been made as far as the utilization of this property, has it been on the old 100-year floodplain when the mill pond was there, or has it been upgraded to be utilized for upgraded designation as far as the 100-year floodplain is concerned?
I would say that the decisions that have been made on land use have not been based on where the 100-year floodplain is. They're based more on implementing the code of the city of Sweet Home. So where the floodplain is what the landowner's going to end up dealing with after we make our decisions based on land use. He'll have to incorporate that into what he does with his property, but that's not part of the criteria that we use for making this decision.
I do know this, that a copy of the survey report and the redesignation by FEMA resides at City Hall somewhere.
Yeah, and he'll have to use that as part of his insurance or his where he wants to build things. And you can elaborate if you want, Blair.
I was just going to say, I've heard of that issue with the mill pond, and our staff engineer had mentioned it to me. I don't recall whether that's been corrected on the FEMA maps yet, but it is an issue. It only would affect the building of structures on the properties.
Sure.
And so for this decision, this decision is about the shape of the lot and whether a variance should be granted for the shape of the lot.
Okay.
And so the floodplain doesn't come into play here. But when a building permit is applied for these properties, then any floodplain designation would affect how those buildings are regulated. And we will endeavor to make sure we have up to date information.
And Carl, I can tell you that they just redid the FEMA floodplain maps. I haven't seen the final yet, but they are doing brand new ones this year. And I don't know if they put out the final one yet. I haven't checked, but there is new. We also had to update our code to go with the new FEMA maps. So there will be an updated version published at some point. So
the only reason that I broached this subject is, probably for the benefit of Roger and Cal in their building. That's about it.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's very helpful information.
I got a really cool picture. That's what it looked like underneath the Foster Bridge. You guys all like to see a neat picture?
Yeah.
Sure. This is what it looked like underneath the Foster Bridge on Highway 20 after the 1964 flood. And this was because the dam was still in.
Wow.
The dam was still in and all of this debris backed up from the dam clear up way above the Foster Bridge.
That's the dam that was on Wiley Creek?
Yeah.
For the mill pond there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember when the dam was still there. I remember when this looked like this. All of this flash logs and stuff came down Wiley Creek in the 64 flood when it hit the dam. it just backed it up. I mean, you know how far it is off that bridge to the water now.
How does he show
Yeah, it's 30 feet
Commissioner
up,
Unger?
isn't it?
Does he just,
What's that?
where's Commissioner Unger's eyes?
That camera right there. I don't know if you can see it or not.
We can send her a copy
Can
of
you
it.
see it?
Thank you. Yeah, I can see it. Thank you.
But, you know, that was a 100-year flood.
Yeah.
And it backed, it didn't get up in there where we want to build a house.
What's,
It backed the channel up. We did have another
that's
100
27 feet above the water level, the normal water level, right? That, the bridge?
I don't know.
I believe it's
About that, yeah.
It's a ways.
It's
27 or 30 feet
That's
up.
at least that.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. But we did have another 100-year flood in 96, you know, and it didn't affect that area.
All right, well, thanks. Back to the hearing. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 7 o'clock. And we'll have a discussion among the planning commissioners. So, Eva?
I voiced my comments, and this looks pretty straightforward. I think the applicant should be able to use his property, and this is gonna help him do that, so that's all I have to say.
Commissioner Unger, do you have any comments?
I agree. I think that it makes sense to change the property line.
Okay, cool. Henry?
I think the proposal is a good one. Changing the property line is appropriate. I have heard multiple times that they have gone above and beyond. And certainly the riparian zone is being protected. So I would be very much in favor of granting this proposal.
Okay. I concur with everybody else, with somebody who knows where the motions are to read, like to make a motion. Okay, he was making a motion.
So I move to approve application VR 20-01 and thereby permit the variance proposed at north of 20 west of 53rd Avenue and east of Wiley Creek, Sweet Home, Oregon 97386. Identified on the Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S01E27C tax lot 02200, adopting the findings of fact listed in section 3 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All those in vote? Sorry, Angela's going to do a roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Wolthius,
Yes.
Commissioner Gatchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0 with 3 absent.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. You too. All right.
I have a question. This seems like it could have been an executive decision.
Oh, the variance? The variance could have been, our code doesn't allow it to be an executive decision.
But there wasn't a whole lot to debate. And
Variances should not.
I'm not proposing
Not be executive decisions.
an executive decision, but we've talked and talked many times about how these things could be with a little revision of our codes, putting more responsibility on you.
It's a matter of how far you want to go with revising the code to how much discretion you would want to give staff. That's not really my place to say where that line should be, but it's as a administrator, as a staff person, I don't want a lot of discretion. I'd rather not have any, because then it's me making the decision and that's not democracy in action. It's technocratic or whatever you want to call it. If you're going to have things like this be an executive decision, you have to put very clear criteria in the code saying this is when the staff is allowed to make that decision. And then sure, if we want to have a code that's in that much detail, then yes, but it really depends on the situation. And sometimes you don't foresee those things. It could be that when they wrote the code, they thought, well, when are we going to have this kind of combination of things arise that this will be a burden to have it go to the planning commission. I mean, this one seems fairly cut and dry, but you could have another one that is almost exactly the same and yet doesn't fit. So I'm not sure where the line is, but it's something to consider as we revise the code.
I'm picking up on your words, cut and dry.
Right. In this circumstance, I think this one is.
It seems that way.
The way that we've talked about being able to allow some kind of, I guess, executive decision on a variance is to say that if it's within
usually
5%, something like that, of what, where it should be. Like
if they were within 10%, this one was significant. If they were within 10% of what they needed, then I think it's more of a case where you could have the code written to where you could have a administrative variance given. But it's a matter of degree, I think. And I in my previous position, I had an administrative ability to do a variance of up to 10%. Or whatever measure it was. So if it was a setback of 10 feet and they were at 9 feet, I could give them a variance for that foot. And it was great to be able to do that. That made sense to have a little bit of wiggle room. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it seems to exceed that percentage significantly.
Yeah. So what about other updates?
In the last month, I've got actually a pile of documents I need to go through that Wendelowski sent me, and the last couple of weeks have just been such a whirlwind that
I've been going.
I have not been able. You have? Good. Yeah. I'm glad somebody.
Could you tell us what kind of things you've been doing as far as being an economic development director and helping businesses?
A lot of it is, I mean, it's been weird because my position has kind of changed from economic development to economic preservation, doing whatever we can to help people out. Most of the work has been trying to keep track of what the state and the federal governments are doing to provide support and assistance, mm-hmm. and to help people make sure that people know about those. There's a number of different programs, and some of them have certain requirements and some don't apply to some people. And so keeping track of all of that and being able to first of all, get the word out on what opportunities there are, but also get information out on how to apply and what the application process is like. That has taken out a lot of time. There are a couple of grant opportunities that we're working on. We just got word from the state that we were approved for one, and that'll be a business assistance grant that we'll be able to use some of our money and some state money combined to provide some assistance, particularly to those who have not been able to receive for whatever reason, have not been able to receive any of the federal funding. So that's coming on board, and then we've got a Cdbg community development block grant application coming up that we're trying to get ready for two additional programs. One is another kind of business assistance grant program that would be basically county-wide, but we're the applicant. it would any business in Lynn County, with the exception of those located within the city limits of Albany, would be eligible for that program. And we would be the applicant for a number of communities in the county. And then also another one that we're working on that is intended to help with childcare to get employees back and meet that need. So there's a number of things that are going on that front. It's amazing how much time it all takes.
Yeah. Are there a lot of businesses in Sweet Home that are taking advantage of the support? I mean, like, I'm thinking of places like eateries or the gym, you know, places that are like long-standing places, probably living, you know, month to month, and suddenly.
I know a number of businesses have been able to get a good amount of assistance, and they've told me that things have gone well for them, and they have enough to survive. And are happy to be reopening, and there's some that are really crushed a lot more than others. It depends on your particular situation. It's a very strange time because it seems like some people are in the worst possible straits and other people are doing really, really well. And it's really interesting how, like, a couple of weeks ago I heard that Coffee Hut did record business, more than they ever before in their existence. And then you have other folks who have, and of course they're a drive-through, so it's easier for them. But some businesses done really well. Some are surviving, some have obviously closed, but they are fortunate enough to have other income from other sources, and so they've been okay. Typically, if you own the property, you're in much better shape than if you're renting from someone. But a lot of landlords are also being quite accommodating. So, because who else are they going to rent to? You know, so it's a really strange time trying to keep track of it all. So,
but generally people are taking advantage, and
you know, I try to. I'm a positive person, so I tend to focus on the positive. I'm sure there's a lot that, and I've heard from some who just are in dire straits and not doing well. And we're trying to line up whatever support we can find to help them out. But I think I don't know of any that are permanently closed in Sweet Home because of this yet. So, you know, there's a lot that are down. I don't know that they're out for the count.
well, thank you for all that work. That's really, really great that you're here to help people navigate this situation.
Yeah, and I just hope it makes a difference for everybody.
It sounds like it's probably making a difference, at least for some people.
So as far as development code, I don't have a lot of updates for you, unfortunately.
That's okay. It's obviously
There will be more.
not the top priority.
In a little bit.
She's
So
got some, maybe.
I've actually been going through it. I did work from home for 2 months, so I had a little quiet time. So I was able to do a lot of reading. Walt sent Article 2, which is mainly the purpose of the criteria, a lot of the definitions. So what they're doing, whether it was you guys' request, but I know I put in the request, we have definitions in all different chapters. And so they've combined them all. They're in one section, which is great. There's actually some new definitions. There's some better wording in there. So I'm going through, what I do is I take the old criteria, stick it next to me, have the new criteria, take a look at it so I know what the changes are. Just kind of look at some things, write my notes in there, and then as I get each section done, I don't correct theirs. I put little notes on the side, and then I send it to Blair, and then we send it back to them because this is the very first draft, and so we're just kind of going through it, seeing. I've gotten through Article 2, Article 3 gets more into the sections. Like I haven't gotten into the residential zones, whatnot, mostly just the purpose. So I'm now starting in that section. So I'm going through each section that they sent us. There's some new sections in there. There'll be the new flood section. We're moving it out of section 15 back into 17. So it'll actually be with the planning and development code now. So there's some things that we're going through. So literally going line by line through each one of them. So Blair sent them to me. I got started on it. It's a lot. It takes a little, you have to be able to sit down, have some quiet time to be able to do it. But we are working through it. So, and chunking away at it and sending them back our comments. So hopefully we'll get to a point where they've gotten our comments. as much as possible, and then it'll come to you guys to take a look at it. So timeline wise, I don't know. They've done a great job. It's a lot of work putting it together. So far, there's just some minor things and more questions on my part than it is corrections. So, but yeah.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, I would not think that it would be an appropriate time to try to take it on right now anyway, because we won't, we're obviously not encouraging people to come to meetings and provide input. There's only 3 of us allowed to be here at a time.
Yeah.
It would be a terrible time to try to work through that, so.
Well, and it's taken a little bit of time for us just to review it. So there's a lot. And so I think, actually this has kind of given us a little bit of time to take some time and read through it in detail. So, which has been nice.
By the time we're ready for any of that, City Hall will be more open, and we'll have, things will be a little bit different with able to handle larger amounts of people. Right now we're limited to 25, I think, in the current phase. And once we're in phase 2 of the governor's reopening guidelines, then it'll go up to 50, I think is the plan. But they're still tweaking that phase. So we'll see.
Is that 50 or 25 in the building?
25 in like a gathering.
In a
area.
gathering, yeah. They're still encouraging, of course, as much distancing as possible and everything, but 25 in a gathering can take place.
That'd be a lot of people in here.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we're not
Yeah.
yet, is to we're trying to be prudent.
Good, I like prudent.
But and actually a month ago or so, the state started reporting cases by zip code.
Yes, I've seen.
And if you have less than 10,
It's 1
they
to
don't tell you exactly how many.
Right, you just get the 1 to 9 category.
So Sweet Home, for the whole time, since they started reporting that, Sweet Home's been in the 1 to 9 category.
But the question is, how much testing has been done at Sweet Home? So it's fuzzy.
I'd say probably very little.
That's
Yes.
I've talked to people who have known people that were told that they, probably had COVID and they needed to stay home and they did not get a test.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating not knowing.
Mhm.
But we don't know of anyone who's actually sick enough to be hospitalized or anything of those cases. I mean, those folks are the ones that are getting tested, and
Right.
0 to 9 or 1 to 9, I think, is where we are with that. My guess is that it's closer to 1 than it is to 9.
So prudent.
Yeah, there's no rush trying to bring everybody together to get through this code update. I mean, when we started it, I was like, we're gonna get this done in a year, but now things have changed completely. So let's wait until.
Adaptability seems to
Right.
be the
There you go, adaptability. Yeah.
do the best we can and adapt as we can.
Yeah. Well, what about future meetings, upcoming applications, things we might see?
So we have,
Do we get to skip next month?
probably not. So with this variance approval, I can now move on to these 2 applications. So one is property line adjustment, the other one is the partition. So we will go ahead with the property line adjustment. Once we sign off on that one, then they're going to partition the upper portion of it, the northern portion of it. So
Is that an administrative
yeah,
approval?
both these are administrative. I gave them for you guys as a review so you would understand why they were doing the variance and why the variance needed to be done. So those 2 are actually administrative, so they'll be coming to Blair's desk as soon as I finish them now that the variance is done. We just today, I got a zone map amendment and property line adjustment turned in. It's not complete yet though, so it depends on if I can get him to complete it here soon, whether it'll be on the July meeting or not. So he didn't send in all the site plan information, so if he gets that to me in the next couple days, then it will be on the July meeting for the zone. The property line adjustment is administrative, but the zone is not, so it'll have to come to you guys for the zone amendment. So that one is a possibility. Right now we're doing a lot of site plans. Molly's handing off a lot of site plans. One is a northern property for Liberty Rock. It's a house. They built one not too long ago and it's really nice. If you go down and look at it, I went and checked it out. They're building a second one. We also have a site plan for some apartments off of Long Street. They're going to be going in. Those finally got turned in, so we'll be reviewing that. I've also we have the zone change for the property that's behind O&M, or the old radiator supply shop. So we have that going through city council right now. Once that gets done, we're hoping to see some sort of development come through on that. So we've got a lot of proposed development going on right now. Applications are kind of coming in as they start deciding they've got to get the zone changes and stuff done. So we should see a lot more development, apartments, duplexes. So a lot of different housing options are coming down the pike. So yeah, so it's encouraging to see a lot of different variety of housing. So, and people are starting to move forward. I wasn't sure how it was going to be with the whole pandemic and how people were going to move, but us being they're able to drop stuff off at the side of the building for us, and we've been able to keep processing just like normal. We just can't have on-site, meetings, but it hasn't slowed us down much at all. So
once we do open up, we're likely to do things on an appointment basis.
Yeah.
Instead of walk-in, we'll be encouraging people that do need to come in to schedule an appointment with us, and that'll make it easier for us. But as of now, everything has been working phenomenally well for just doing things electronically. And it may be that there's a number of citizens who are not able or not comfortable doing that, and they're holding off. Those are likely to be smaller permits, sheds and the like on an existing property.
We've got a ton of permits and so yeah, things have not slowed down. So people are busy doing stuff at home right now. So yeah.
Cool, that's good to know.
That's good.
So for the July meeting, we may have a zone change.
Yep.
And if we don't have that, then we don't have anything.
As of right now, I'm not sure. So that's the only application I have that's on the books right now. The rest of them are all administrative.
Okay.
But that one, and it kind of depends. We're kind of sticking pretty heavily to our deadlines, trying to get them in so we're not rushing. People have been pretty understanding about that. So as long as I can get the rest of the information from him, then we'll have a meeting next month. So, and the other thing, because you're all not here, I didn't put it on this agenda, but the September agenda, we'll need to get that approved. The first meeting in September is actually Labor Day. So we'll need to choose a different day, and I'd rather do that ahead of time than right before it. So probably whatever meeting we have next, I'll probably throw it on that meeting, but since there's only 4 of you, I figured I'd wait, if that was okay with you guys. Yeah, but I have it on my notes to make sure that we vote on that at some point, because we don't want to come in on Labor Day. At least I don't. So.
Can we be a squeaking wheel and just keep squeaking about a PA system?
Part of that's been complicated by the fact that as soon as we had, once we had this pandemic hit, the city manager instituted a spending freeze on non-essential purchases, mainly because this is going to have an economic impact on the city, and we're trying to be careful with funds, but we will continue to push toward that PA system upgrade.
Squeak, squeak, squeak.
I double Henry squeak. This is a double squeak.
All right.
Between my hearing and her voice.
That's right.
Well, we
have a challenge.
The internal PA system we haven't gotten yet, but you'll notice there's new microphones, right? Those pick up really well.
And these in the ceiling, these are new speakers.
So they were getting there.
They will be, we're getting there. We just don't have everything yet. So
squeak, squeak.
I'll pass on the squeaks.
Yeah, some of this had to be a priority just so we could have virtual meetings.
Right.
But so we've gotten part of it done. So it's getting there.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks you guys for taking.
Yeah, thank you.
Keeping the meetings rolling, even though they have to be virtual.
And thank you all for being adaptable when it comes to holding these. It seems like every single one, we have a completely different, on the software side, I gotta do something different every single time. I wish I could just stay with the same format, but I think we've got one
And now you've got a loose screw over there,
Yeah,
or whatever that was.
I'm gonna let Brandon fix that one because,
No, not touching it.
we're not playing with that.
Well, you guys ready to adjourn?
Yes.
I'm ready.
Okay. Adjourned.
All right,
you.
thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Unger.
Bye.
Thank
Nice to see
you.
your face.
Good night.
The live event is ending.